Hello everyone, I am Mary Joy Almasin. Today I'm going to discuss the affective filter theory by Stephen Krashen. So let's start the main principles of affective filter theory. So Krashen's affective filter theory is a part of his broader framework for second language acquisition, identifies emotional factors that can either enhance or hinder the language learning process. The theory emphasizes the importance of creating a supportive, low anxiety learning environment for optimal language acquisition. So, the affective filter as a mental barrier. The affective filter is a metaphor for a mental barrier that can block or facilitate language input. Krashen suggests that when the affective filter is low, learners are more open to language input, allowing it to reach areas of the brain responsible for language acquisition. When the filter is high due to negative emotions, the brain does not effectively process language input and the learning is hindered. So the affective filter is a mental barrier. This theory builds on the idea that language learning is not merely cognitive but also highly influenced by emotional states. Unlike other cognitive filters, which deal with processing capacity or attention, the affective filter specifically relates to emotional responses that influence how receptive a learner is to language input. Next is the key affective factors influencing the filter. Krashen's Krashen's identifies three primary emotional factors that influence the level of affective filter. First is the motivation, second is the anxiety, third is the self-confidence. First, we're going to discuss the impact and the type of motivation. So motivation. Motivation refers to the learner's desire and willingness to engage the language learning process. Highly motivated learners are more likely to invest effort and persist through challenges. So the impact of motivation, a high level of motivation generally lowers the affective filter, creating more receptive state for language input. For example, if a learner is highly motivated to learn a language for personal or professional reasons, they are more likely to focus on input, increasing comprehension and retention. So there are types of motivation. The integrative motivation, which means desire to connect with culture or community of the language. And the second one is the instrumental motivation, practical benefits or like career advancement. Both type can lower the filter, but integrative motivation is often more effective in creating a sustained and deeper engagement with language learning. Next is the anxiety. Anxiety refers to the feeling of nervousness, or fear that a learner may experience when learning or using a new language. The impact of anxiety is high levels of anxiety raise the affective filter, acting as a barrier to effective language learning. So when learners feel anxious, they are more likely to avoid challenging tasks, withdraw from interaction, and focus on avoiding mistakes rather than engaging with language. This limits their exposure to and retention of language input. So anxiety, there are two types, the facilitative and the debilitative anxiety. Facilitative, a low level of stress that encourages focus and motivation. And the other one is a high level that hinders learning. Facilitative anxiety can sometimes prompt learners to engage more carefully, while debilitative anxiety usually increases the filter, impeding acquisition. Next is the last one, is the self-confidence. Self-confidence refers to a learner's belief in their ability to succeed in learning the language. High self-confidence fosters a relaxed attitude, while low self-confidence often leads to anxiety and reluctance. The impact of self-confidence: learners with high self-confidence tend to have a lower affective filter, making them more open to trying new language tasks, engaging in conversation, and tolerating mistakes. In contrast, those with low self-confidence are more likely to experience heightened anxiety, increasing the filter and preventing them from fully engage with language input. So that are the 3 factors influencing the filter. Okay, affective factors influencing the filter. Next is the interaction with comprehensible input. So according to Krashen's input hypothesis, language acquisition occurs most effectively when learners receive comprehensible input. Means language that is slightly above their current level of proficiency. The affective filter theory complements this idea by explaining that the effectiveness of comprehensible input depends on the learner's affective filter level. So, how does it work? Even if the input is comprehensible and well suited to the learner's level, a high affective filter can block that input from reaching the brain's language processing areas. For example, a student who is anxious or lacks of confidence may not fully absorb language input even if it is at an appropriate level. Conversely, a low affective filter allows the input to pass through to the brain's language processing mechanism, enabling better acquisition. So in the practical implication, teachers are encouraged to create a classroom environment where students feel motivated, safe, and confident, reducing the affective filter so that comprehensible input can be fully processed. Strategies include supportive feedback, low-stress activities, and an emphasis on communication rather than connection. Next is affective filter and optimal language acquisition. Krashen argues that optimal language acquisition occurs in situations where the affective filter is low and learners can engage freely with the language. This theory suggests that language teachers should focus not only in providing appropriate input but also on managing the emotional environment of the classroom application. In practical terms, this means creating a positive atmosphere where students are encouraged to speak without fear of ridicule or harsh correction. Teachers may use strategies like group work, role-playing, and games to build a supportive environment, thereby lowering the filter. Next is the self-reflection. It falls in the affective filter and optimal language acquisition. Learners can also be encouraged to monitor their own emotional states and adopt strategies for managing anxiety, such as deep breathing, self-affirmation, or goal settings. By recognizing their emotional responses and learning to manage them, learners can keep their affective filter low, improving their overall engagement with the language. So that's the principles of the affective filter theory. Now let's proceed to the issues in language acquisition. While Krashen's affective filter theory has been influential, it has also faced critics regarding its theoretical and practical applications. One is the lack of empirical measurability. Critics argue that variables like anxiety, motivation, and self-confidence are challenging to measure quantitatively, since these factors are subjective and vary widely across individuals. They make the affective filter difficult to assess reliably. For example, a learner's self-reported anxiety might not correlate directly with their language learning outcomes, complicating empirical validation. Next, overemphasis on emotions. Some researchers believe that Krashen's model places too much emphasis on affective factors while underestimating other influences, such as cognitive and social factors that impact language acquisition. The theory has been critiqued for not fully addressing how external factors like social interactions, cultural background, or specific instructional methods impact language learning. So that is the second issue, the overemphasis on emotion. The third one is the overlapping with other hypotheses. The affective filter theory shares some similarities with Krashen's input hypothesis, which emphasizes the need for comprehensible input. Some researchers argue that these concepts should be distinct, as affective factors and the quality of input may influence acquisition in different ways. This overlap can make it difficult to isolate the unique contributions of the affective filter. So again, that are some issues that the theory face in terms in language acquisition. First is the lack of empirical measurability. The second one is the overemphasis on emotions. And the third one is overlapping with other hypotheses. Now let's proceed to some successful researchers conducted with the theory. Dulay and Birth, 1977, Psychological Aspect of Language Learning. Dulay and Birth examined how affective factors such as encouragement and supportive environments influence the language acquisition among young learners. Their findings indicate that children in positive and nurturing learning settings demonstrated faster and more effective language acquisition. This supports the notion that a low affective filter, characterized by high motivation and low anxiety, facilitates better learning outcomes. That is according to Dulay and Birth, 1977. Next is Schumann, 1978, the acculturation model. Schumann's work on the acculturation model examined the relationship between social distance and language acquisition. His research showed that learners who feel accepted in their new cultural environments or low social distance acquire the target language more readily. This aligns with Krashen's theory by highlighting how a low affective filter associates associated with social acceptance and reduced anxiety can enhance language learning. Next is Young, 1991, Language Anxiety in the Classroom. Young investigated the effects of anxiety on language learning in classroom settings. The research revealed that students with low anxiety levels, often promoted by supportive environments, tended to acquire language skills more effectively. This study supports Krashen's assertion that a lower affective filter achieved through minimized anxiety and increased support enables learners to engage more fully with language input. So that are some researchers conducted with a theory, the affective filter theory. So lastly, in conclusion, Krashen's affective filter theory explain how emotional factors, specifically motivation, anxiety, and self-confidence, influence second language acquisition. When learners have high motivation, low anxiety, and strong self-confidence, the affective filter is low. Again, when learners have high motivation, low anxiety, and strong self-confidence, the affective filter is low, allowing language input to be more fully processed and aiding learning. Conversely, high anxiety or low motivation raises the filter, blocking input and hindering acquisition. The theory highlights that creating a supportive, low-stress learning environment promotes effective language learning by lowering the affective filter. While impactful, it has faced critics for lacking empirical measurability, focusing too much on emotions, and overlapping on Krashen's input hypothesis. Studies by Dullenbert, Schumann, and Young validate aspects of the theory, showing that positive, low-stress environment aid language acquisition. So that is my report about the affective filter theory by Stephen Krashen. Thank you so much and God bless.